that meal prep life.
The first step is you want to turn your oven on and turn it up to it's going to be 450 degrees Fahrenheit. Obviously, you're going to have to let this pre-cook, so you let that sit for a little bit as well, just to warm up, but you can get prepped while it's going. In the process of preparing it, you obviously want to use spray. Make sure the pan is set and clean too when you go through and set that up, because you're going to be baking chicken obviously on that. So spray that through, just make a thin layer, make sure it's not going to stick, just making it stick proof. Then take your breast, preferably boneless, skinless chicken breast, and you're going to lay that out on the pan as well. It's really just a matter of getting it put on there so it fits. That's kind of priority number one while you're going through this. Obviously, you have to get a little creative. You'll see here too, it's just a matter of spacing it out. You want to make sure that the pan is big enough, or you could be lazy like me and just kind of cram it on there and figure out a way to Tetris it so it works. So the next step is going to be taking spicy mustard. It doesn't have to be this type. Really, you can grab any spicy mustard. Any type's going to work. Since it is Cuban inspired, the basis is kind of a Cuban sandwich here. So you do need spicy mustard. It's more or less a key thing on just adding flavor to this dish as well while you go through it. Just kind of mix it up, clop it, and then you're going to lay it out on all of the pieces here. It really doesn't have to be pretty. Obviously, you can do a better job if you really wanted to. You could actually let the chicken get coated and soak it in it, let it marinate in spicy mustard if you really wanted to. Again, if you're being lazy like me and you've managed to spend more time meal prepping over the course of time than you personally prefer, then you can just kind of smother it on there like this, and in no real order, just lay it on there. It doesn't look pretty. It's going to bake anyway, so a good portion will probably fall off. That's just something you have to own up to and accept as well while you're going through it, but it is part of the deal. So you're just laying it on there, making sure it spreads out and balances on each piece. You do want to try and get enough so it's going to stick to it while it bakes, so you're not losing everything, just with the moisture of the chicken. It kind of runs that out as well. So you're just going to wrap this up. Now, obviously, I'm pretty well done. Got everything layered, and there's a nice, thin, thick, however you want to interpret that, layer. And this is what it's going to look like. Why even bake it? You could just eat this. Obviously, that wouldn't be sanitary, so you do want to bake it. Now, the oven's set 450 degrees. This is set to go, so you're going to throw it into the oven. We're just going to kind of set it and forget it while we go through this process. There is a timeline that we're going through it. I will tell you the key things that you want to make sure that it cooks fully in this. I don't use a thermometer like you probably should, but you're just going to throw it in there and let it sit. Shut that one up for a little bit, and then set your clock, your timer. I just do it right on the microwave on here, as you can see. Laying through the first round of baking is 15 minutes, and you just get that set. Run through, let that sit, and then wait. Do whatever you need to do in that time. Now the 15 minutes has passed, you're going to open it up here, take a look at how it is. It should be white. It's from the outside, it'll actually look like it's cooked. You do want to use a mitt. I actually almost reached in there and just grabbed it. That's obviously not a good move to be doing that. So you do want to be safe. Just kind of lay it on the counter there. It's baked on. It's stayed. So a fair amount of the spicy mustard has actually stayed on this, which is great. Now the big thing is you want to take a fork, you could take a knife, you're going to flip it. So you want to break the chicken and flip it over. Try and bake the other side of it now. Obviously holding a camera and going through this, you can probably do a better job than me fumbling around and just forking the chicken on this pan. Taking my pretty time going through that. It does help too with the fork, just because you'll poke some holes on it so it can steam cook and get a little more heat going through that as well. That definitely helps. I mean, you're going to be cutting holes into it anyway, but it definitely helpful to kind of go through this process and make sure that you have it set up to bake again. Obviously, take a knife, exactly like I said. You can cut down the middle just to split it so you can bake it a little better. Try and get some moisture cooked off here just to fully cook the chicken on this. Pink knife not required. It's just a cheap knife from a dollar store. It doesn't have to be anything special here. So now it's pretty well set. We have all the chicken pieces cut, split, ready to go. You can throw that baby back in the oven. Grab that mitt. Again, it's raging hot, so you don't want to be grabbing the pan. Just kind of shovel the pan back into the oven. You can be baking it again. Again, just kind of going, set the timer. You do want to make sure you time it correctly on this too. Breast is thicker than thighs if you're using chicken thighs, so you need to cook it a little bit longer. Once again, I'm just going to do 15 minutes, kind of the golden number here, at least by what I do without thermometer on that. While that's baking, we can go through the next step. So again, you just want to prep. It's all about kind of efficiency, time efficiency here. You're going to take a can of chickpeas, and I'm actually going to pour. You can see here it's a quarter cup that we're actually going and filling this up to from the chickpea juice. So you have that set, just kind of set aside as far as the juice goes. Now you want to drain the rest of the chickpeas. This can is drained, and you're just going to empty it into a food processor. So that's another thing that you would need. You probably could use a blender if you wanted to, but a food processor is going to be the way to go. Once you have them in the food processor, you're going to pour a little bit, not all of it, just a little bit of the juice that you set aside now. And because it's in a food processor, as you can probably imagine, we're going to go through and we're just going to process that. Once again, because I'm holding a camera in one hand going through it, you're probably going to look a whole lot more graceful than me fumbling and slipping there as well. But you go through, you do want to pulse it, so you don't want to overwork the food processor, just so you're not breaking it consistently. So in waves, kind of run through that just to process it down. It's basically like hummus, so that's one thing you'll notice. And I'll have other recipes related to that because it is basically hummus at this point. You're going to add more chickpea juice to the rest of it just to wrap off blending that, but just making it a little more liquidy. You don't want it too thick on this. Blend that up. Obviously that looks great. Just some lovely chickpea juice splashing up all over the place, and that's what you're going to be eating. It will look better. You're going to be mixing with other things, so I promise there is something to make it look more appetizing in this process. Now everything's pretty well set. You want to grab a big bowl that you're going to set aside. This is what it looks like. I mean, Bob wasn't joking. It literally is very similar to hummus. You're going to dump that in. If you're compulsive like me and you don't want the waste, you'll probably be cleaning it excessively just to make sure you get every ounce, like I did, dumping that blender off as well. You can shake this off. You're definitely going to have to scrape some of it too. So that's just something you do have to accept. You're going to be scraping a good amount of it. There's a handful there. So I've got that scraped in now. Just set this back because you're going to be using the food processor. You definitely don't need to clean it. I mean, there's nothing the matter with the chickpeas as is. So what you're going to be using that for, this little slip up again, one-handed wonder here, shoveling that through. So you can just kind of set that, put the lid on it, set it aside for a little bit for now. And then we will revisit this hummus sauce that we have set in the bowl. So we'll go over to that. Once again, spicy mustard, breadwinner here. See, different type. It doesn't have to be the Mr. Mustard or whatever it was that I originally had on that. You're just going to layer this in. So I do use a fair amount. It is a key thing. So one of the big things is you're not using a bunch of sodium, not using a bunch of sugar ingredients. It's just spicy mustard's a good way to go because it's lighter for that reason. You blend that in. So there's a lot of kind of shoveling it through this hummus mix, chickpea mix, just to make sure that that's laid in because it is just spicy mustard and chickpeas. I'm going to add ground pepper to it and a fair amount. I'm not measuring anything out here, so just kind of winging it, throwing that on there, and then I'm going to actually throw some sesame seeds. This is just kind of my own rendition of tahini without the oil. Adding to it, there's some fat and sesame seeds as well, so it helps with some of that too, just to get fat into this meal. So now you're going to reach in the oven here. Chicken should be done at this point. 15 minutes has run out. We're going to reach in there. You can see all the steam. I swear it's steam, not smoke, so I'm not burning my place down while going through this process. You tell it looks pretty well set, so the chicken chunks are pretty good to go at this point. You do want to check it. I mean, we'll go through and make sure that it's fully cooked while we go through that too. But just shut that. So I'll shut the oven, set the mid aside here too. I'll reach over now. You can actually shut your oven off too. So stop wearing that one out. We'll move on over to the chicken. You can see everything's pretty good, pretty well cooked. A fair amount of the mustard that was on there has baked off. You do want to make sure there's no pink or red that's going on with the chicken. And that's how you look. Just make sure it's white on there. And now what we're actually going to do, you're taking these pieces of chicken and we're actually going to throw it into the food processor. It helps because it's warm, so that'll help break it down and make it a little easier for the food processor to break down too. So you'll see I'm actually going to lay down. What I'm doing is actually laying down about 3 days worth, just because I know I'm the type of person that I get bored if I just eat the same exact thing every day entirely. So I'll have it a little different where I'll eat like the whole chicken for probably the last 2 days of the week, and then the first 3 days I'll have this actual sandwich recipe going. We've got that set though, so with chicken in the food processor, throw that lid on there. Again, chickpea juice, not anything you have to worry about, so you can actually blend it on there. We've got that going. Believe it or not, it does work pretty well. Food processor, if you have a heavy duty blender, you could actually use that too, like I mentioned originally there. But really running through, it does, you can see it just shreds this apart. This is a really beneficial way to go. In general, I will say too, one of the benefits is I work in a corporate job and I don't want to look like Gollum eating chunks of chicken, ripping it apart in my desk. So this is actually a good thing on future recipes too, just for yourself to know that you can blend down or food process chicken into shredded chicken for you. So there's a number of things that you can work with. You can make your own chicken salad if you wanted to go that way too. Very similar to it. And then we're just taking that, we're going to really go through and pour that in here again, being compulsive, throwing it in there, just being uptight, making sure I don't waste the chicken because you need that protein. And now you're meal prepping, and that's the new life you're living. It's the joy of that meal prep life. So you're pouring that in. We've got the chicken in the bowl here. There's some waste there that I'm probably going to waste and set aside, so you can call me on contradicting myself there. But you're going to mix this in, so you do want to really work it through the spicy mustard, even though it looked like a lot of spicy mustard and chickpea sauce there. It's really not when you mold it through all of this as well. So that's another good reason not to do too much of the chicken. That's another reason that I did 3 days worth here, just to work through, just because I simply do not have enough chickpea sauce. You could just do a second can if you really wanted to, and that would cover it, but I'm not going to, just for the same boredom reasons that I mentioned before. With that said, so now you're going to take bread. I'm using rye. It does not have to be rye bread. I'm just trying to be artificially accurate to a Cuban sandwich, which I think uses rye bread. That's an exaggeration. I'm sure it was clearance bread that I bought for $1, something like that, and that's the reason that I got this type. I am going to bake it, so that's one thing that you're going through. You just want to make sure to bake it so it's not soggy bread while you store it in containers. One of the big things with meal prep that you'll notice, you're going to have a bunch of Tupperware that you're going through, and stuff will get soggy if you don't have it prepped up. You could throw butter or something on there. I'm not going to be adding the fat from butter oil to this, so I'm actually just going to throw it in there. You can see it's at 300 degrees is what you're actually toasting it at. There's no real specific timeline on this that you have to go through. The biggest thing is just to get it kind of crunchy and set so you could actually toast it if you have a toaster. You could just lay it on the oven. It probably bakes a little better. And then I'm actually going to come up, and you can see with my microwave timer, I'll run through, set it all up, go through that timer. I'm actually doing 5 minutes here, which should be plenty of time to actually get that lined up as well while we're going through it. All right, so time flies when you're having fun. This is pretty much done now. Reach in there. I pulled out. I mean, you can check the bread. You do want to make sure that it is done. You do want to make sure it's toasted. But it should be set. I mean, it really is. The biggest goal is just to make sure that it's not going to get soggy. That's the overall goal here. And now I've got the Tupperware laid out as I mentioned before. This is your new life with that meal prep habit, living out of Tupperware here on out. You can see too, I've got the chicken chunks set in their own Tupperware things, but I'm going to set these items just down. One thing that I do, I'm actually flipping it in a way that the softer portion, which is going to be the bottom portion, is on top here. That's what's getting sandwiched with the chicken mixture and everything that we're going through on that. So you lay that into everything. Now I'm actually taking, shout out to Vlasic, because these are actually phenomenal. The Sweet Heat just stacker pickles on there. I love spicy food, and that's the reason I do it. By all means, you do not need to be using this. You can use any type of pickle and throw it on there, but I prefer this, so I throw 2 on there, have that one set. Do this for the other ones as well. Just layer the 2 on there too. So we've got that set now running through, and obviously the third one gets the same treatment. You're just throwing it on there onto the softer portion of the bread, which should be face up now. So all 3 are set up to sandwich these. You're going to throw just the shredded chicken mix on here and just pile it on. I will tell you, if you're using the same amount of chicken breast that I did, it's going to be a lot. So I don't know, if you're into, like, if you're trying to go on a high protein diet, something like that, this is just a good way to go because you're really piling on chicken. You could do a thin layer, so that in itself, if you wanted to cover it and you're just trying to make a casual meal, throw that on there and do it that way. Just to have the sandwich set, it's a little easier too to take out and eat that way. I'm also going to put spicy mustard, so you're going to put a layer on there. One reason for that is because there's so much moisture going on, so much just kind of water from the chicken, that a lot of the mustard gets watered down, so you don't get as much spicy mustard as you would think by adding all of this to it. And it just kind of adds flavor. So that's a big thing going through, is just make sure that you have the added flair and then layer it so you have the sandwich pretty well set too. I will tell you, I'm obviously using more, so it's going to look like this. It's packed in there, so these are like a lot of chicken shoveled in this Tupperware, and that's what you're going to be eating for lunch. I've got those set too now for Thursday, Friday meals, just to have that set. And then I'll figure something else out. Probably have like rice and vegetables to cover, since they won't have chickpeas or the carbs, the bread going. So I'll just add rice that way, and then this is it. You have it. Your meal prep is good to go, and enjoy that new life.